Please, can you hear me? Oh, it's echoing.
Yes, we can hear you.
But it's echoing.
Yes.
Okay. So I think. Can you hear me?
Yes, see the Simpson.
Okay. Can you hear me now? It's not echoing, right?
Yeah, it's quite okay like this.
Oh, okay. All right. That's great. Admit. Yeah. Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us. It is just a minute past 4. We're going to join us, and so we're going to commence exactly 5 minutes past the start time. It is 4:05 at my end. It's going to be 4:05 at my end, so people don't really miss so much and can uh, catch up. So thank you so much for joining once again. I join with 2 devices so that I can see the room. Okay, that's our facilitator. Hi, Mr. Sam. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm fine. I'm good.
Awesome.
Okay, so I said we're going to commence exactly 5 minutes past 4 p.m. So that's in the next 3 minutes, just to give others the grace to join us. Okay. Okay. Hi, Tiffany. Oh my God. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. All right, I have to join with two devices so I can see the room. I hope to be chatting with us, but I know a couple of us here already. That's why I'm not doing so much talking. So I think we can just commence. They will most likely just join us before the session starts proper. So just to chat with us a little bit, let's just kindly introduce yourself. I already introduced myself. I'm Maderunke. Most of us know me already. And I'm speaking to you from Lagos, Nigeria. So we can just drop in the chat box our names and where we're joining from. And I'll just like one or two people to tell us what they expect from today's webinar. It's on working with layers and variables, and we have our facilitator here already, who is a respected person in the industry. So let's use the chat box, your name and where you're joining us from, and we can use that to um, just buy time for those that are yet to join. And your expectation, what do you want to take out of this session? Is it to be able to create better engaging and interactive course, or able to manage your layers better? I want to believe that most of us here, we're not new to storyline, right? As e-learning developers, but I'm a believer of no knowledge is a waste. I always believe that no matter the number of times you've um, attended a training on the same topic, you will still get to take out one or two things from that session. So you're welcome, and you've made the right choice to be here today. All right, Tofumi, thank you so much for joining from Kwara State. Thank you. I scheduled a reminder to remind those that have registered. I mean, exactly four, so that they don't forget, because sometimes you forget that you have an appointment for a particular period of time or at a particular time. So they also have gotten the reminder, and they should join us soonest. So thank you so much, Mohammed, for joining. Mohammed from Pakistan, hoping to gain further understanding on the use of layers and variables in storyline. I am looking to get better at using storyline, and that is why I am joining the training. Great, thank you, Mohammed. Um, Marvel, I'm joining from Lagos. Thank you so much for joining. I am from Miss Paul. I'm joining from Lagos, Nigeria. My expectation will be learning smarter ways of using layers. Great, great, great. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. And trust me, I have attended. Okay, you have Tofumi raising a hand. Okay, so I have attended different training sessions facilitated by our facilitator, that's Mr. Sam. And of course, it's been an amazing session most times. So I am 100% sure that today's session is going to be very insightful. You'll be learning a lot from him. Like I said, he's a respected person in the industry. And what I love most about him is the fact that he is always willing to share his knowledge. That's why he is another invitation to be here today. So thank you so much for joining once again, and thank you, Mr. Sam. I am happy to have you here today. So we still have more messages in the chat. Okay, so Albert from Accra, Ghana. Thank you, Albert, for joining. Always glad to be here. I am here to learn. Thank you, Albert. Samuel, that's our facilitator from Texas, US. I am excited to be here. Thank you, Samuel. I am Daniel, joining from Abuja. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And I'm sure our facilitator has noted all that you all expect to take out of today's from today's session. And you're even going to get more than that. Trust me, I'm 100% sure. So I will just give a brief profile about our facilitator before he comes on board. So our facilitator is Samuel Kwata. He is a dedicated instructional designer with a decade of experience developing and retaining talent for organizations like T-Mobile, GM Financial, and Starbucks. He holds a graduate degree in instructional systems design from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, Samuel is well versed in creating motivational and meaningful learning that develops skills and inspires better performance. He is also a regular contributor to the Articulate e-learning community. Sorry, I'm looking at my screen. And Samuel currently leads a special interest group session on instructional design at ATD Fort Worth Mid City, where he also volunteers. And his website is samapata.com. You can always look that up. I mean, I think I've checked it out before, and you see amazing works of our facilitator Samuel Akpata. So thank you once again for joining us. He's going to come on board soon, but before then, Tofumi, you had your hands up.
Yeah, hello everyone. Good afternoon, and wherever you're joining from. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about my expectations for the webinar,
Yeah.
and which is to have a better understanding of variable. I've always been hearing variable, but I don't think I understand it so well, and how to apply it when designing courses too. So that's my expectation for the webinar. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Tofumi. I'm sure at the end of the session you will understand variables better. All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to allow our facilitator to come on board while I try to reach out to those who have registered. So thank you so much, Mr. Sam. You have the floor. Did you all hear me, please?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, so I think it's from Mr. Samson then.
Sorry, I stepped away. Did you already call me?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay.
You can have the
Sorry.
floor.
Apologies. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here amongst everyone. Just looking at all the names, there's a lot of familiar faces. So this feels like I'm talking to friends. And thanks, Ronke, for that wonderful introduction. Again, my name is Samuel. I prefer Samuel only because it ends in e-learning. It was meant to be, right? Yeah, today really is, I want to call it a discussion. So I wouldn't go the typical presentation route, even though I do have a PowerPoint deck, which I'll be sharing in a second if I have permission to. Do I have permission to share my deck?
Yeah, you can check the screen. Yes, you can.
Perfect. Please confirm if you can see my screen. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I think some people can voice still coming up on my end. Yeah, I can see it now. I can see
Okay.
it. So
Perfect. Yeah, so today really we're going to be talking about, and I have something else coming up in about an hour, so I'm going to try to at least, go straight to point. And so really we're going to be talking about working with layers and variables inside a storyline. And just from what I'm hearing, it sounds like a lot of us already use storyline, or at least know what storyline is. So whether you have a training background or you're just learning about instructional design or e-learning development, this will be a foundational class for you, because there's no way you're going to avoid working with layers or variables inside a storyline once you start building. So, hopefully this session will give you that knowledge that you need, and you can also, do your own research afterwards. But how many people are already familiar with layers of variables? Just by a show of hands, or however you can, if you want to type it or come off mute, I would like to hear from you, like what experience do you have with layers and variables inside a storyline? Anyone? No? And I can't see the chat, so you're going to have to help me out if anybody does have experience. And if not, it's totally fine. So really,
So I'll just I see layers as baby slides,
okay,
and it helps to make my content more organized.
okay. Yeah, that's a good definition. Baby slides. I'm never gonna forget that now. Yeah, that's really what they are. So they're similar to your main slide, but they're really not. So it's like a layer on top of your main slide that you can, and it's also good to talk about why we use layers or variables in storyline. It's really to give you that level of control that you normally don't have. So, it's all about what you can control and so on. So really this table of content is what we're going to go through. So we're going to talk about how to add layers, and how to work with audio on those layers. And we're going to explore layer properties, and if there's, well, there will be time to, go through some demos and just really see how, those are set up, and how you can begin to think about working with layers in your own courses. So I would like to just dive straight into storyline at this point, because that's why we're here, right? To just explore storyline. So I have, and it's really a working session. So, feel free to ask questions or come off mute at any point. I will just start with this blank slide. And this should look familiar to everybody. If you've ever worked inside a storyline, this should look familiar to you. This is just a canvas, a blank canvas, which you will start to add your content and start to make things look awesome in a second. But if you open up Storyline, this is what you're faced with. And it's similar to any other program that's out there. So, think about your other programs like Illustrator, Canva, PowerPoint, or just pretty much any other tool. You have this blank canvas, and you're supposed to add elements to it. And so let's talk about the timeline for a second. So the timeline is really what's down here. Can everyone see my screen? Can you see where I'm pointing? So just down
Yes, I
in the
can.
middle of your screen. Exactly. That's where your timeline is. So, and you can see right here, it's labeled timeline. If you have objects, you can change the states of those objects. You can add notes to your project, but the timeline is really where you want to be, most of the time. And you do have this playhead that's on your timeline. This playhead is telling you that the current timeline is from 0 seconds to 5 seconds. So, and I'm not sure why I can move the playhead. Well, I can. So it's showing you that it's from 0 seconds to 5 seconds. That's all that's showing you. So oftentimes when you're trying to add an object or shape to your scene, it's wherever you have your playhead is where that object is going to start from. So you have to be conscious of where your playhead is. So if you were to, for example, place this square shape on your playhead, on your timeline, it would start from 3 seconds, which isn't very helpful often. So if you were to preview this slide, you wouldn't see anything until you got to that 3 seconds mark, which can be confusing. So if you're a new storyline user, you're almost wondering, like, where's the shape I just added? It's because you didn't pay attention to where your playhead was when you added that shape. One quick fix is to just move it back manually. So now your playhead is going to, another quick fix is to always hit the stop button before you add any elements to your scene. So hitting the stop button will reset that playhead. And you may want to write some of these things down because they're just, things you would use throughout your journey as a developer or instructional designer. So if you hit stop, it would just reset that playhead and you can add any element from there. So if I were to add a circle now, it would start from that exact place I needed it to start from. So just a quick tip as we learn about these things. And the reason that I'm showing the timeline is so you can understand layers when we start to talk about layers. So the timeline also mimics what a layer is. So you have the square shape, and then you have the circle shape layered on top of the square shape. And I can change the color so it makes more sense. So if you have that red shape on top of the blue shape, it's layered on top of that blue shape. So if that's clear, then we can start talking about other elements that you can add to your scene. So you can add an audio file. So I'm just going to add a random audio file from my computer, and you see how that just layers on top of these other elements, and you see it drags out the timeline because that's the length of the audio. So whenever you're adding audio, it takes over, and it takes over the timeline because audio cannot be, it's not a vector shape. It's more, it has a duration. So that's the way it's interpreting that audio, and that takes you all the way to the end. Okay, so that takes you all the way to the end. And you notice inside of this audio, if you double click your audio, you can edit your audio. So these are your sound waves. So this is what your audio looks like, and you can almost tell where you have audio. You can almost tell where you don't have audio, which is this blank spaces here. So that lets you walk quickly. And if you need to increase the sound of your audio for any reason, you can do that even right here by going to volume and, bumping that up and, hit OK, and you can instantly see the sound waves increase. So I'm not going to save this because that's not really what we're trying to do here. So most often, the reason you will be thinking about using a layer is because, not to say you can't solve a lot of these types of problems inside of the main slide itself, because this is the main slide. I'm going to title this just that, so main slide. So you can solve a lot of problems just on the main slide. So for example, if you have two people talking, maybe, well, let's not use people now. Let's just use maybe there's two shapes having a conversation. and just work with me here, okay? So you have these two shapes that are having a conversation, and each one of them they have their own audio. So let's bring in another audio, right? Let's bring in a different audio. And this time, what do you think will happen if I were to play this? If I were to preview this slide? If anyone wants to answer that.
Both audios will collide down to noisy.
Exactly. Marvel, is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I recognized your voice. So yes, both audio are going to play if you were to preview the slide. And let's just preview it just for fun. Let me make sure I'm sharing my sound though. Is my sound being shared? Let me. How do I get back? Okay. Sorry, let me make sure I'm sharing my sound. So share screen, share sound. And please confirm if you can or cannot. Can you see my screen? Can you hear the sound?
Yep, so I can see your screen.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Let's walk through Appendix D.
Exactly.
Preset.
So we don't want that, right? So that's one case where you would need to move your audio to a layer. And the way you create a layer is to go down here and click on new layer. Best practice is to name your layer. So you can say even layer 1 is sufficient in this case. And then, you don't want your audio here. You can import your audio, or you can just cut and paste it, which is what I'll do. So Control X and then Control V. So notice that this layer also has a timeline, right? Similar to your main slide. It's the exact same thing. It's got a playhead, it's got a timeline, and everything. But on the main slide, you're in a situation where you don't want, maybe your circle needs to, maybe the audio for your circle needs to play on layer 1 and not on the main layer. So maybe this, so you want, in often case, you would want the sound to play without interrupting, right? But that's not going to happen right now, because if we play this, we haven't even told this layer to show up. You have to write an action. So that brings us to something else, which is called triggers, right? It's almost like an action. If you use Photoshop, it's a trigger. So you're trying to, it's almost like a prompt. So if you use ChatGPT or any other tool, you'll be familiar with what triggers are. So it's no code. You're not coding. It's not that serious. It's more, you're telling elements on your page what to do. So using this, and you don't have to remember any of this. Just remember you have trigger. You don't need to remember that you have a trigger wizard, which is just a fancy name. This is just a menu, right? So it has presets. So one of the presets is action. You have your slide, you have when, and you have object. So it's really who is doing what. Just like your English, most sentences are built around who is doing what. So, and that's what this is. You're saying who is taking this action, or what action are they taking? So what action are they taking is you want to show layer. Which layer? If you have multiple layers, this will make sense. But right now you only have one layer. So show layer 1 when the timeline starts on this slide, right? It could be, there's so many actions that you can add. So, but in this case, we're going to say when the timeline reaches we could say 5 seconds, right? Is that clear, or does anybody need clarification on that one?
Yeah, it's clear.
I'm going to take silence for we're all following along, which is good. So you're saying show layer 1 when timeline reaches 5 seconds, and that's it. Like, so obviously, even without adding a cue point or anything, I don't like cue points, by the way. I think they can be very confusing. So, just using as minimal of actions as you need, you can make that happen. So if you were to play this slide and it got to, but then there are other controls that you want to, so that if you double click on your layer, on the actual layer itself, you can still add more controls. So first, I usually, like any slide with audio or video, I would like to add seeking. So I would like to add a way for learners to drag the playhead and get to wherever they want to. So I like to leave that as a yes. And then you also want to pause the timeline. This one is very critical. So oftentimes, you have your main slide playing an audio and you want this second audio to play. So it's best that you pause your timeline and that you also prevent users from clicking on other layers. That's not really important in this case, but you can just click it anyways. So having those 2 layers. And besides layer, you can also have dialogue, which locks the layer down a little bit more, but that's something you can explore on your own. So you can either have it as a layer or as a dialogue, but I prefer to use layers. And you don't need to hide objects on the base layer. You don't need to hide, well, you can hide the slide layer when the timeline finishes, but oftentimes you want your learner to be able to control that. You don't want things just jumping around without their consent. So we're going to hit close, and that's going to save all of these settings. So I'm going to hit close now, and if we were to preview this slide,
Turn to page 2 and follow the single study or anecdotal evidence decision tree.
it would
Let's
jump.
walk through Appendix D.
You see how it jumped in 5 seconds?
Step by step.
It jumped by the time it got to 5 seconds in that case. So that's one way to use layers, to to add level of interactivity in your course. I mean, think about anything else you can add. You can have maybe tabs like this one. I've already set this one up, but you can have tabs like this one where you click on one layer and where you click on one tab and it shows a different layer with maybe a definition or pop-up and so on. So that's just a way to set that up. And I don't know if anyone is following along. Are you building along? Please let me know so I can maybe slow down a bit. But now let's explore some examples of layers in action. And this is a good example, and it'll probably give you more sense of what we just built. So here's a finished slide where I'm using a combination of drag and drop, layers, audio, animation, and all the fun stuff. So I'm just going to preview this slide. And hopefully you will be able to connect the concept with the final project.
Together, these forms of inquiry drive continuous improvement in healthcare. In this activity, you will explore inquiry in practice. Drag each icon on the left to its corresponding stops to learn more.
All right. So it's telling me to drag these items. And if I didn't get that instruction, I can come over here. And this is just using states. So I have this other state that's built inside of this one state. Just a quick way to, and then I have this drag and drop object where I'm saying when this is dropped on this, well, let me show you that. I don't think I showed that. So there's a box right here, and I made it transparent because I don't want the learner to see it. There are boxes on all of the spots that they have to visit. So when this object intersects, or when it's dropped on that box, right? When picture 5, which is what this is, you can see that down here, picture 5, when it's dropped. So I'm using a trigger to control that. So when picture 5 is dropped on rectangle 2, which is what this is, you know, show this layer is all I'm saying. And that layer is another animation, is a video. So let me play that once more. And, you know, hopefully you get the gist. It's just showing a layer on top of the main slide.
Together, these forms of ink to learn more.
All right, so we're going to drag and drop,
EBP
and that
begins
video
with
shows up,
identifying a gap between current practice
right?
and the
And then we
desired
have
practice.
this
It starts with
shape that's just going to close that layer. That's also controlled by an action, right? So this is going to remain in position until I move it again. And then you see that visited state is also there, which is added to that transparent box.
In the Johns Hopkins model, we use the PET process.
Right. And things like this, they're easy to build. It's just, you're only limited by your imagination, right? Which, you know,
The Johns Hopkins model,
it's just thinking about these things
quality
on
improvement
how you want to build it. So, for example, if, for example, for this one, I'm using a shape. So normally you could just, because this isn't inbuilt, right? This is something, and I'm not sure why they don't have close buttons. I mean, it seems like something people need a lot. So why not just make a close button and not have to build it yourself? But, you know, here's what we have to do for now, at least. So you have to search for maybe an X icon. And I'm sure, you know, many of us have been through this process before, where you have to add this, you know, being conscious of where your timeline is. So you add this X icon, and you have to use a trigger to close, to say, hide this layer when the user clicks. You know, sometimes it's all there by default and you don't have to change anything, as long as you have your object selected before clicking on trigger. And then when you hit OK, you know, that's telling this layer to hide itself when this shape is clicked, right? So that's super simple action, but, you know, where you could run into problems. And I'll show you something real quick after this.
Together, these forms learn more.
So you can drag this,
EBP
and then you can use this to close this out, right? So it's performing that same action that I have on the hotspot. And the reason I'm using a hotspot for something like this is that sometimes when you use a shape like this, you have a void inside of this. It's treating it as two shapes, right? So it's not just one shape, and I can select it to see. You see that down here? It's treating it as two different shapes that are grouped inside of one. I don't like to see this. Like, to me, it feels like three different shapes, and it can get very confusing. So one way would be to either add a hotspot, or you can even decide to take it apart. So you ungroup it. So that, and then you make one of them the main one, and then you can add the others at the state level. So let me select this. I'm going to use Control X to X out of that, and then I would just pick one of these guys to be the main guy, and then edit state and add it at the state level. So now things are feeling like they belong in one piece. So rather than just group them, what I'm doing here is actually just adding everything into one state, into one object. So without grouping, so, you know, at that level, you're working with just one object at this point, which, you know, you hide your object and that's it. Everything is in this free form too. But that's just a side note for folks who use states a lot. You know, don't group your items. When you group things together, Storyline doesn't know which item you're talking to. What else? So let's talk about, you know, things like, you know, and there, you know, just several ways to add interactivity to your course. So you can, for example, you know, this is one way where I added interactivity to this course just by making it a puzzle. You know, it's a branching scenario where I'm trying to have the learners go explore the different topics. So
Next, let's review our work and whom we serve.
So they're able
Click on
to
each line of business to learn more.
So it's a business about, you know, they take care of animals. So I felt it was cool to just have an animal in the back and have them explore each topic. So each time they would click, it would take them to a different topic, and it's revealing, you know, it's making them feel like they're accomplishing something.
Nice job completing this section. Click next to.
And that's all done with, you know, just shapes. You know, this was created in Illustrator and brought into, and you don't even have to go make it so complicated. You could go in here and find icons like puzzle pieces. They could be easier to work with. So something like this could work for what I just showed you. You know, you can have your puzzle pieces. It's all broken down. If I can select it. Yeah, like if you can select stuff, you can just drag from the side. You know, those are just easy things you can do. You can hold your control and select this, so you only have this guy. Well, that's gonna be tough to select. But yeah, you get the point. So, you know, or you can just undo and start over again. Let me. Or it's going to end up in the same place. Or I could maybe start to drag it out and turn this, you know, break this out into different objects in this case, and start to customize each one. And then have a picture behind it. And each time they visit, you add a visitor state, which makes it. And sorry, you can stop me at any time. I think I'm going maybe too quickly for. So you can add a visited state where, you know, in the visited state, you don't actually have anything. And that way it exposes, you know, you still have your object on your normal shape, but your visited state, there's nothing there. And then, so if you were to preview this and click on that shape, then it would be visited, and then the visitor state has nothing.
Let's review our work and whom we serve.
You know, that's how simple it was to create that bit of puzzle. And in other cases, let me stop here. Any questions? Are we learning anything new, or is this all just basic stuff?
Yeah, it's been good, Samuel. Someone dropped a question in the chat box. So I wanted to draw your attention to it. But I even had my hand up. So Mohammed is asking, he said, do we need a blank box to drop an object? Can we drop it on the graphic already there and get the same result? So Samuel, I don't know if you want to clarify, you can ask the question yourself. Can you unmute? Sorry, Mohammed.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead.
So I was wondering, when you showed us the drag and drop activity, you said that you had blank boxes where you dragged and dropped each of the objects, right?
Yes, correct.
And I was just wondering if that is possible if you just pick up the object and drop it on the graphic that was already there, like the graphic which showed the check mark when we dropped it on the
Yes.
blank box. Can we drop it on the graphic that was already present, or do we need the blank box?
Yes, you definitely can. So in this case, there was no graphic. There was so all of this was brought in from beyond. So it's an animation. It's not. This isn't a graphic. This is a video file. So the background is a video file.
Oh, okay.
Or not even a video. So it's an image. Sorry. So it's an image. It's just one image. And
Okay. So we have the image, and then so the interactivity is basically on the boxes, and the image is just in the back.
Exactly. In this
Okay, I got
case,
it.
the interactivity is on the box. Yes. So, and on the back end, it's really just go to form view and assign the drag item to the drop target. And, it's so easy to create these drag and drops. Like you can create a drag and drop out of anything. You can just go to insert, go to convert to free form, click on drag and drop. Okay, and this becomes a drag and drop. And all you're doing at that point is assigning what is being dropped on what. You want to drop the oval on the box, and that's all that is. By the time you play it, you're able to.
Turn to page 2. Follow the single study for anecdote.
Yeah, so all of that is useful. But before we run out of time, I just want to show you this, and I've kind of built this out, but really it's just a tab set where these have different states. So you can have the hover state, the selected state, and the way I did that is just by. So I'm just gonna can I delete states? I don't think I've explored that option before. Or edit states. Yeah. So I can delete states. And, all I did was to add a hover state, which I made a different color, and then added a visitor state, which made a different color. Right? So they're all just visual cues to let the learner know what they're doing. And you can quickly apply that same state by clicking on your format painter. So you don't have to apply to each one. You can just go here and, make sure you're not in text mode. This is text mode, right? You want to make sure you select the actual line before you go to format painter. And by the time you click on this other box, it just takes the same kind of states that you already have in that initial one. So that's one quick way to speed up your workflow. And in this case, I'm using variables. So let's just delete this variable, and let's just try to rebuild one real quickly. So in this case, variables, they're really just these, they're like a level up from actions, from triggers. And here's your variable. So if you click on the X shape, and this cuts across so many tools. So just having a basic understanding of it will really help you speed up your workflow. So I'm going to delete this, and then we can recreate it. So you can create a new variable by clicking on this plus sign. We can call it score, and then we can decide what we want it to be. It can either be a true or false variable. a text or number. So number is what you would normally use if you're trying to do gamification, but if you're trying to maybe display your learner's name, you probably will use text. You know, true or false has its own place as well, but you know, in this case, we're using numbers, and you can either make it a random number or you want to make it a value. So value is letting you have more control. You're saying you're starting from 0, right? So we're going to hit OK and hit OK. Now we have a variable inside of our course. Now we want to call that variable. And the way we call the variable is by assigning it. So we can say, you know, and this is something you can display on your slide, or you may decide to display it on the side. So let's just display it on the slide in this case. So we're going to say score. That's just your normal, and I'll make that larger so you can see it. So you want to say score, and then maybe add a colon, and then the way to call your variable out is using a percentage sign, and it's case sensitive. So in this case, we called it score as well. And then by the time you add your percentage sign a second time, all of this is going to be your variable. So you're calling it out to be displayed. So remember what the variable was? The value was 0, right? We hadn't assigned any value to it. So it's displaying whatever you have here. So here you have number and it's 0. That's the default value. So that's what's being displayed here. So if you were to create another action that changes that variable, then it's going to change that number, right? So in this case, we're going to say, let me just delete all of this. In this case, we're going to say, we're going to use a trigger to control that. And you know, what trigger are we going to use? We're going to use the adjust variable trigger. So adjust variable. If you're working with variables, this is probably the only trigger you're going to need here. And so it's important to remember it's adjust variable. So you're saying the action is you want to adjust your variable. Which variable? Always start from the second one, right? Don't start from the first one, because you want to select the variable first. So you want to say score, you know, now it's recognizing, it's going to present the options based upon your selection here. So now you can say add. So let's say you want to give the learner a score for every time they click on a tab. Here's how you would do it. You would say adjust variable, add the value. Well, I think I got that wrong. So score should have been the last one. So add the value 10 to score. I mean, all the options are here. It's just knowing what you want to do. So you're trying to add 10 for every time they click. So when is when the user clicks rectangle 2. And when you hit OK, you know, and you can do the same thing for these guys. But instead of going through all that manual work, I would just select this guy. I can see the trigger right here. I can just duplicate this trigger and just say copy and paste. And then all I have to do is change who is doing it, right? So now I can make it the second guy, and I can do that again. Who is doing it? The third guy. Then that's it. They're all adding 10 to this score line whenever they're clicked. So let's see that in action. All right, so we're going to click on this tab, and you see how that updates, right? So you get your 10, you get your 20, you get your 30. Now, it looks like we have some control, but we don't have all the control, because if they keep clicking, they're going to get more scores. And that's, sometimes you're only trying to score them 30. So you can write another action that says, when this score line gets to 30, you can use this variable to control something else. You can say disable the buttons when the variable, or you can say change the state of rectangle 2 to disabled when user clicks. You can even make it disable itself. So, right? You can do that. Like, so that way you're not getting multiple scores. So you're just really thinking of the easiest way out, because you can also write another trigger to say, so once I click once, I'm not able to click again, right? So it's really how simple, or you're just trying to connect the dots. That's all you're doing. You're thinking, okay, this variable can control this guy. And you're also thinking of the learner's experience, like, how do I make this, how do I control this then? That's all you're doing. So, you can also say adjust variable. Remember, I told you, if you're working with variables, you're probably going to be using adjust variable. You can say, so let's change this to score. So you can say, set variable. So set that score equals to value 30 when the variable adjusts. You can still say that, I believe. When variable changes, so you still say the same score variable, and then you add a condition. Condition is optional, but it also gives you that level of, of control that you may need in some cases. So you can say the variable score when it's 30. So whenever it's 30, it's not going to go past 30 if you add this. So you're saying adjust variable, set score. So keep it at 30 when the score changes to 30, right? So, not sure if that's a good solution in most cases, but, that's what's going to happen in this case. When it gets to 30, it's just going to stay at 30 and not go past 30. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, call me a liar. Not sure what I did wrong, but I hope this makes sense, though. Any questions about the process? Well, I have to make this work first. Or is this even,
Sure.
do you?
We have 2 questions. Okay,
Yeah,
I think
please.
3 questions in the chat box.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm just going to read them. Then anyone that's not clear, whoever asks can just mute to speak or provide more clarity. So Jason Tofumi is asking, can you show us the triggers you used to design the content on the puzzle? Did you apply triggers to each puzzle piece individually, or the puzzle is just a single image or different puzzle parts?
The puzzle.
Can you read the chat box? Okay.
Sorry, say that again.
Okay, I was going to say if you can read the chat box yourself so you can
Yes,
understand better.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I'm trying to do. So in this scenario, you would use, okay, can you use a trigger for the content? Yeah, definitely can. So let me show you that real quickly. And if you don't mind, I actually have have to start another meeting. I don't have to be in a meeting per se, but if I can give like 5 minutes, I can, jump right back to this one. Would that be okay? Can I do that? Like, just give me 5 minutes. Okay, that works. Okay, all right, perfect.
Yeah, you can if you
Yeah, let me do that real quick,
perhaps
and
give a tax.
yeah. Okay, let me do that real quick, and you can share in the meantime or talk about any of the things I was talking about. I'll be back.
Okay. No problem. We're expecting. All right. We had him. He has to join a meeting and he'll be back in the next 5 minutes. So pending the time he joins, I don't know if anybody wants to respond to Jason Tofumi's question about the puzzle or the triggers. So I don't know if you saw when he downloaded the puzzle parts. That's from the icons. You can always search from the icons. You download the puzzle parts. Yeah, and then you had triggers to each of them depending on what you want. Okay, when using the format painter, does it copy just you're welcome? I'm sure it's going to provide more clarity when it comes back.
Oh,
Or
right. Because
the
I actually tried it, and that's
when
why it came in as just a single image. So I'm like, oh, so how did he divide the different parts to apply triggers?
most times the thing is most times it is usually you download an icon, they are grouped automatically. Even
Okay.
when these icons are separate, I mean, they are individual parts. Icons are what we can design by ourselves. And when you design these icons, it's you adding one shape or the other together. We have this merge shape feature on Storyline now. I don't know if you've seen it. If you right click, you're going to see the option merge shape. So they are just individual parts, individual shapes that end up becoming a meshed shape or an icon. So that's puzzle you're saying. They are just different parts that were meshed together. So if you click on it, you can always ungroup, or you check your timeline, you see the different parts there that, and then you're able to just add whatever thing you want to do to each of them.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think Martha, you want to say something?
Yeah, so I wanted to answer the question to my best of my knowledge. So when you download the icons and they come in groups, so you ungroup it, then you can add your triggers to it. Then you can tell your trigger to either show a layer or hide. So what I think Sam did on that slide is the image was on the layer or on that particular slide, the main slide, and the icon covered it. So when you click on the puzzle icon, each one will hide itself. So when you click on the first one, it hides, it shows a portion of the image. You click on the second one, it hides, show a portion of the image. So before you click on all the four images or all the four icons, the full picture will be visible. So to my best of knowledge, that's how I understand how I designed that slide.
Okay, seeing it's actually true. Yeah, I've seen it. I was able to ungroup it, and it's now
All
appearing as
right, so it's like opening the puzzle. Okay, just talk for me. You were saying something.
Yeah, I said thank you, Marvel. I was able to do that. So I ungrouped it and I can see them in different parts. So they are showing in 4 different parts under my so I'm good
Yeah.
now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great. Your timeline, right? Yeah,
Yes.
most of those icons are grouped. They are just different shapes that were meshed together to design the icons. We can always design our icons to sometimes ourselves. And thank you, Marvel, for providing more clarity on that. So it's just basically you opening the puzzle and then it shows the different parts of the image. Thank you. So, Marva, you asked a question. When using the format painter, does it copy just the state and animation, or does it include everything? That's the triggers. When using the format painter, does it copy just the states and animation, or does it include everything? I honestly don't even know what you mean by format painter. Can you elaborate?
Okay, so yes. So when he was illustrating the tabs on the layout, first slide of his presentation, he has different tabs that when you click on it, it shows a different layer. So he was trying to change the state of each tab and added color to the state and added the texture to the state. Then he was like, if we want to do it to the rest tab, we don't need to start repeating the process. Just use a format printer to copy the states and paste it to different tabs. So I want to just display that if that covers the trigger too, or is it just the state copy?
Okay. Oh, I think I understand you better now. You know, when you copy something, you always get this format. Do you want to copy it with the format as well? Right? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, yes. Something like that.
Okay, but yeah, we have format painter. I guess you wanted to say paster. Is that what you wanted to say? Or
Oh,
type?
okay. I think, let me see. It format printer on the storyline.
Okay, format painter. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
when you
check
just
it out.
check on your phone, when you check on your home, close to paste, there is cut and copy. Under that, there's a format printer.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
they're just stuffs we don't even take note of. Yeah, format painter. Okay, I get you now. I doubt if I've used it before, safe. All right, so I'm very sure when it comes back, you respond to that. Muhammad asks, in this scenario, we can use the variable adjustment to apply dynamic scoring, right? Meaning if we have one option that is supposed to be chosen, the learners gets 10 points. If we assign it to the variable, and we can assign -10 or any negative number to a variable. And does that add the total score after each option has been clicked or chosen? So I believe that each shape there has its own score, which is 10. So it depends on how you want to gamify it. Sometimes people will design their course or question such that when you choose the wrong answer, it subtracts 10 or a particular score from all that you've gained so far, like whether your coins or your points. And when you select the right one, it adds 10 to it. But in this case, it's just adding 10 to each of them. So one option that is supposed to be chosen, the learner's 10 points. Okay, there's someone coming in. Gets 10 points if you assign it to the variable, and we can assign -10 or any negative to a variable. Yeah, you can always assign or set the trigger or variable to subtract a particular score from it, and you can always set it to add a particular score from it, or to the variable or the score, depending on whatever you want to achieve.
Right.
This
I think
session
I got that
recorded.
from. Sorry, I think I got that from what Sam was demonstrating before he left. I think you're right. We can use the subtract trigger to take
Yeah,
out 10 points, and we can use the add one to add the 10 points. And by the end, I saw that the score had updated to 40. So I think it will repeat in the scenario. It can update to whatever is added or subtracted. So yeah, I think it answers my question that we can get dynamic score. Thank you.
yeah, all right. You're welcome. So this session is being recorded as well, so we can always replay it and understand better. So it should be here anytime soon.
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Oh, oh, you've been here before. Oh, I didn't know it was you. All right.
So let's,
You're welcome. I don't know if you want to. Yeah, we were discussing the questions asked. So I don't know if you want to still check them out and shed more light on them.
ooh, I'm getting the infinity screen. Can everyone see that? No, like, can you see my screen or is this?
Yeah, it was up, but you stopped sharing.
Just a second. All right. So let me go ahead and try to share my screen again. Ooh, infinity screen. That didn't happen before. Let me, is it because of the account that I'm using? Or, yeah, let me share my other screen. That might work. Or let me share a window. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, back up.
Okay,
I can.
perfect. All right, so let's tackle this. What are the questions? So if I recall correctly, there was a question about the puzzles not being, I think there was a question around, how do we control the puzzle to show? Is that correct?
Yes, yes. She was concerned about she thought the puzzle is actually just a group, like just one image that cannot be or icon that cannot be separated. Then we're able to make her understand that it's
Yes.
an icon that was grouped and you can always ungroup the
Exactly.
puzzle.
Exactly. So it's an icon. You can, once you bring it in, you can just right click and ungroup that icon. And then, treat each one as a form. So you have 4 different forms, 4 different free forms that you can now start to customize. So one way to customize it will be to, either give it a hover state, however level of detail you want to add to it. You can make it have a hover state where you can either change color or make it lighter, which is what I normally would do. Just increase the transparency a bit, and then you can actually have the visited state, which is just going to be nothing, so you can actually see what's under the puzzle. So yeah, that's one way to do it. And then use the triggers to say what's going to happen when you either click or drop an item on each one. So, that's just one way. States are really interesting. I think, instead of using layers, sometimes states are just okay to use. Like, why go all the way building layers when you can just, have, you can have a video inside of a state. Like, that's how powerful states are. Like a shape like this, you can, maybe even a smaller shape like this, you can have an entire video inside of your state. Like, you can say, I don't know why you would do this, but just think about the possibilities instead of looking at it rationally, right? You can put a whole video inside of a shape where this video could be maybe the visited state. So let's just duplicate this and make this visited instead of new state, because that's just one of the default states. So in that case, it already knows what to do. You don't need to write an action to tell it to go to visited, because it's already one of the, it's almost like selected or visited. So, in this case, if you just clicked on this, it would just show that whole animation under it, which you can't see because of this other shape, but you get the idea though. So yeah, like instead of having a layer as we normally would do, like you could just, but I mean, so what's some of the downsides you can think of in putting a video in a shape? If anyone wants to join, if anyone wants to just highlight that. What's some of the downsides for putting a video in a shape? I'm going to call names.
All right. But I think the video might probably just take up the shape of that particular shape.
Yeah.
And might reduce the resolution. I don't know.
Yeah. One other thing is you don't have control over the video anymore. So you're probably not going to be able to well,
Play
maybe.
and pause.
So let's actually play it and see what level of control we have on the video.
In this module, we will define the implementation process.
So you can pause the video. Well, you can pause it. You can pause the video still. But it does act funky, right? So it's not playing right now when it should be playing. So yeah, maybe there's some downsides to it. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, instead of layers, sometimes you can just add everything inside of your visited state. So if we delete this video, for example, you can have a whole bunch of text inside of, and I forget how to add lorem ipsum, and yeah. Yeah, you can have the answers to your question once the letter selects that shape. It's not visible right now, but instead of using a layer, you can just say when they, you're not using an action, you're not using a layer, you're just saying, once they click on that, they see the answers or they see that information. So that's just one way to look at states as well. And we're just comparing at this stage. So comparing different things, looking at ways to make things more interactive. Like this is learning objectives for a course I created that's on, I think, a growth mindset. So I just thought, why not show something that grows like a tree with apples, to explain to have the learner start to interact with the learning objectives. And that's what I did. So just had the apples as different objects and then added some interactivity to it.
Select the apples to view the learning objectives. First, we'll explore growth and fixed mindsets. You'll learn what distinguishes a growth mindset from a fixed mindset, and how a growth mindset can positively impact your interactions with colleagues and the overall work environment.
And you see, I'm also using emphasis to show some level of growth as instead of just a regular hover state.
Here, we'll discuss how challenges are.
But yes, that's just one way to look at it as well. So, having those text and narration on different layers and controlling when. So, some of the problems you would run into when you're, a slide like this, the client or, whoever is going to tell you, like, we want them to click on all the apples. We don't want them to move forward until they click on all the apples. So one way to do that is to disable the next button until all the apples are visited. So you can say, change the state of the next button to disabled when the timeline starts on this slide, right? So that way, when you preview it, the next button is disabled. So when do you want to enable it? You want to enable it when all the apples have been clicked, right? So you're going to write another trigger that says, change the state of the next button to normal when the state of icon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm hoping those are the icons. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are visited, right? Now, normally that would work fine, right? Or we expect it to work. But I'm going to show you one other trick.
Select the apples to view the learning.
All right, so you see our next button is grayed out. We click on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you see the next button is still grayed out. So that tells, and you would run into this problem like 90% of the time. What's really happening here is it's jumping from layer to layer. And guess what? When you double click on your layer properties, it's telling it to automatically decide. That's not what you want. What you want to do is resume save state, right? Because automatically decide is almost saying reset. They go together. What you want is resume. You want it to register that you've already clicked on that apple. So let's preview that once more.
Select the apples.
So now you have your next button grayed out.
First,
Click on all the apples.
additionally, finally, we'll explore the role of a group.
All right, calling me a liar again. Sorry. Yeah, we probably did something wrong. So maybe we didn't select all of this.
It happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes
yeah.
what I do to be on the safer side, I don't even introduce the button at all. I will introduce the button on the last slide. So I just delay the button. That's what I do. I delay the button to avoid stressing myself with triggers and the rest. I just delay the button. So you don't even see the button at all until you're done selecting all the.
Yes, but you don't know what order they're going to click. I think that's where
So at that point, I just tell them what to click first. Let's start with the first step. That's what I do sometimes. That's just a lazy work though. That's what I do.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. Yes, that totally makes sense. Yeah. So the more you can get your learners to, and sometimes you have cases where you have to have branching scenarios. I don't like to see branching scenarios, and some guys I work closely with on this call, they know me for that. Like, I don't like to see branching scenarios. Like, I feel like it's confusing for you. It's confusing for the learner. Your storyboard should, as much as possible, look just linear like this, where, if you were to branch at all, and sometimes you have to branch, right? So what if something that has a definition has another definition, and you've already branched, like, so the first thing is to, instead of branching, is to use your layers. So use your layers first. Then if you exhaust your layers, then you can branch. But even something that's even better than branching is color coding. So color coding is really just saying, this is one topic. It's, everything I'm going to do from here on out is going to be red. This is another topic is going to be blue. This is another topic is going to be green. So, I've introduced my topics, 1, 2, 3. So my next slide would be, let's say I'm using Beyond or, some other tool. I would use mainly red graphics for, to show that it's separate from every other thing. So you still, because really, like, why are you having learners click on different tabs or in different order when it's not even necessary? Like, of course you want them to go 1, 2, 3. Like, why are we giving them that option to start from 3 or to start from so yes, that's one way I'm discovering now that you can, just color code it. So use mostly red for those slides that explain that first topic, and for the second topic. I don't know if this makes sense what I'm saying, but just one method I use instead of having branches in areas where you're not sure where you are, or you can't get back to the main menu, or things are not checking off correctly. Another thing I want to show you, I know we're running out of time here, is this knowledge check, which, why have a boring knowledge check when you can just add little enhancements to it that makes it even better, right? So normally you would have this knowledge check with a submit button and that's it. But in this case, we're talking about green jobs. So, and I'm not sure what the definition is for green jobs, but I think it has something to do with the environment. So that's what I did. I created this, these icons. So I'm tasking the learner with, green your path by answering these questions. So green your path is collect 1 tree for every correct answer. That way they feel like they get into a destination. And here's what that looks like. Yeah, it's a, see, I'm missing my match because of e-learning. Yeah, and please don't tell me the scores. I'm waiting to, that's what I was doing before now. We haven't won any match this season, but it's anyone's guess who my team is. All right.
I want to guess mine.
So you have this interaction, and it's anyone's guess how this was created, right? So hit submit, and you can collect a tree. So this is just one icon I put on the response, but that tree actually shows up. And now the learner is like, okay, I want to get more trees. And then, they get another tree and so on. It's usually all of the above. Right. Yeah. It's simple, but can be effective. And it doesn't take anything to build this at all. I think I'm just using state to, I don't even think I use state. So it's just, so they have unlimited tries for this one. And, somehow they're going to get that tree either way. Like by the time they click on all 4, they're going to get that tree. So I didn't even use any variables or slides or anything or states. Like it's all just the next question already has that tree and it's just animating in, if that makes sense. But yeah. And feel free to stop me. I can talk about this all day. It's, this one is another one that's just using state, really like
Flip.
yeah, like it looks cool, but how do you create something like this? It's just using the inbuilt animation, swivel, and that's it.
Sam, I have
Yeah.
one question.
Yes,
So,
please.
when creating working with layers, I think one of the mistakes we do make is overlaying of voice. So let me assume we have a voice recording on the base layer, and we have another voice recording on the sub layer. Now, how can we like prevent the base layer from speaking while the sub layer is active?
Yes.
That's it.
Right. So one thing to avoid absolutely is, oftentimes you're saying, so you have these objects that you're bringing in, and let me look for a good example. So you have these cards, well, maybe not the cards. What's a good example? So maybe this one. You're introducing a topic, right? With your narration and everything, especially when you have narration. You're introducing the topic and you're already saying, click. Like when I see something on screen that's just, either animating in, I'm already thinking this is clickable. I'm going to click this. Like, I'm not going to wait for you to tell me to click it, right? So one thing we want to do in that case is either don't bring in your apples until the end, right? So that way, but I mean, in that case, you still have to have something visual that they're able to, be patient with, right? So in this case, maybe we don't want them to click the apple until it says click, which is often the behavior we want. Because even though we can pause the slide, we can pause the base layer but we don't want it to get to that point where we don't want it to be confused or, visit the definition and then they're still hearing, oh, okay, now you can click. Like, it's already too late. We already clicked. So you can either have your buttons show up like later on, or you can place a transparent box over it. So in that case, I would just make it not clickable until it gets to the end. So I can format the shape and make it transparent and go to format, take out the border. So that shape is there. So they can't click on that on the buttons. But then you now, allow them to click at this point, which, isn't too bad. They still get the information, but you still want to add the pause to your layer and all of that extra stuff, just in case, someone still gets, you still want to add your pause timeline of base layer. You still want to add your sync bar if you have audio on the slide. I hope that answers your question. So let's play this up, and at least now we have two controls. So we have the buttons are not showing up, and then you can't even click the button in the first place. So that should hopefully solve that problem. Yeah. Yeah. And in your voiceover, you're already saying select the apples, but then you still have other explanation to do before you get to that select process. Well, okay, maybe not in this case. So there's no other audio. So yeah, that works for this. In this case, you didn't even have to do anything because everything was already outlined there. But there are cases when you're providing a bit of explanation and then your learner is already clicking and you don't want that. So you move everything to the end so they can't click it. hope that helps. Any other questions before? Yeah, you may get a question like this, like reflection questions. How do you collect feedback for reflections? And this one is always tricky because clients feel like they want it, but nobody really. I don't think I've taken any training where I saw a reflection question and I'm like, let me type my thoughts. Like, it's just not practical. Instead, I would advise interactions like a checklist or something, or in this case, I even made, for this one, I actually made it work in a way. So, because really reflection, you're trying to confirm if they actually learned what you taught them. So you want them to reflect what they learned back to you. So it's just another way to repeat the lesson. And
at this point, we can start thinking about what makes research credible. Type in 2 or 3 of your ideas here.
Okay, so let's just, I mean, this is me knowing there's no way this is going to be captured. Idea 1, idea 2, and then I hit submit, right? Okay, so that's supposed to go to the next, but I don't see a next button. So let me just enable my next button in this case. Okay, so I'm going to select these 2 slides.
At this point, we can start thinking about what makes research credible.
Next. So.
Type in 2 or 3 of your ideas here.
Sorry, not sure why that's happening. It's supposed to show me the next slide. Why is it not doing that? Anyway, here's what's on the next slide. So the next slide just presents the answers, right? So we're going to use a variable to, again, why variable is important. We're going to use a variable to display
Here are some of the answers I have collected
the answer
from colleagues around
that
our
I typed in, and then they can compare it. They can compare that answer to my own answer, right? And you can see that in action here. So, this text entry is really just saying, here's a variable and that has been set. You're setting text entry to that type value when the entry loses focus. And entry loses focus just means when the user clicks outside, and you're going to click on the next button. So that's you clicking outside. And then when you get here, I'm using this variable to call this text that you typed in here. Does that make sense? I don't know why I can demo it, but jump to the next slide. And to the next slide. Oh, okay, I see. So let me disable this. So it should work now.
At this point, we can start thinking about what makes research credible. Type in 2 or 3 of your ideas here.
All right.
Here are some of the answers.
So you see that?
Collected from
Anything I
colleagues around
typed
our
in there
offices.
would show up
Research
here
should be credible.
because I'm using a variable to call it out. And really how you set that variable up is just by going to your variables and, you create a new variable that says, maybe reflections, and you make sure it's text. So we're not dealing numbers now, we're dealing with text, and the default value is blank. So you hit OK, and now you give the learner a space to type their text by going to input, and that'll be data entry, because what they're entering is really a data, right? So this is how people call names, or this is how you personalize. If you want someone to type in their name and then have it show up on the next screen. So there's your data value, right? And you're telling this data value, you have to write an action for it. So you have to go here and say adjust variable, right? Set text entry, which is what this is, to the value. Yeah, I haven't done this in a while. Value when, yeah, exactly. So, just make sure you have a trigger attached to it. And then by the time you go to this next screen, and maybe you want to provide personalized feedback, you want to tell Samuel that you want to say, hi, Samuel, this is your feedback. Now you can go to text box and, why is my text box not working? Okay. And remember what we talked about, you have to use your percentage sign. So you have to say reflection. So you remember the name of the variable, and then you use that percentage sign that calls, whoops, was it reflection? Reflections. So you're missing the S. So that's actually a good lesson for us to, name your, well, it wants me to type it over again. So reflections. And then, yeah. So by the time you type in your name, well, I'm not actually reflecting in this case. Well, not this slide. I'm trying to do selected slides. How many people have had to do that, like personalize lesson using the learners' names? This is how you do that. All right, I see your hands up, brother. Okay.
At this point, we can start thinking about what makes research credible.
I didn't get that. Did you say something?
Here are some of the answers I have collected from colleagues around our office.
No.
Yeah, the third time I'm being denied. Why is that?
It's your club. It's your football club.
I know, right?
Man, you.
It's starting to rub off on me, yeah? Hold on. So
Yeah, we have
okay,
questions in the chat box. You might want to check them out.
okay. Yeah, I see what's happening. So that second trigger that I wrote is telling it to set it to blank, which, it's not needed. So I didn't know it already added a trigger when I added that. So yeah, so it should show up now. Yeah, so we'll probably win that match. So you have the questions in the chat.
At this point, we can start thinking about what makes research credible.
So next.
Here are some of the answers I have collected from colleagues around.
Okay. All right.
Did you on the slide?
Did I click on the slide? No, it's supposed to display. So like what I'm really just doing is I'm just saying type. Maybe something has changed in the storyline I don't know about, but you can paste it here and it should, you're saying this is a variable and this is your text, and you're saying, oh, okay, I see what's happening. Yeah, so it's setting the wrong variable. So not text entry 1, what we want is text entry. So yeah, that's all it is. Yeah, so naming really is important when you're working with variables, because if it's not my name, I'm not going to answer you. It's what it's telling me.
At this point, we can start thinking about what makes research credible.
Yeah.
Type in 2 or 3 of your ideas here.
Anyway, you get the idea. So you said there are questions in the chat. And I'm trying
Yes,
to get to the
please.
chat. Yes. What are the questions? If you want to come off mute and ask, I'll be perfect as well.
Oh, okay. So this is from one Matt. It is a lot.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just
So do
read
you want
through
to
it.
read it?
Yeah, I'll just read through it.
Okay.
So I have a two-part question. I've heard several opinions from IDs, including learning objectives and about including learning objectives and training models. I feel is there a group of learners who are being provided training intervention for a skill. They already know what to, yeah, it's an assumption, and we always, especially when we're working with adult learners, we're thinking, a certain grade level. We're not looking at them as they already know it. If they know it, they're not going to be in that class, trust me. So, you always want to train for the maturity or is it for that one learner, right? Like if I came in here now and just assumed everybody already knows what I'm talking about, then I'll probably lose a lot of people. So I think, stating the learning objectives is also telling them why you're doing this, right? So, and that's why I had a table of content to say, okay, this is what we're going to cover, and then you cover it. And it also helps you align your lessons. So if you have like 3 models and the first model is talking about this topic, that because in a training you don't ask questions on what you haven't taught, right? So you also it helps you make sure you're covering all the bases of your training. So yeah, but I mean, there are people who are arguing against it, but sometimes those folks just want to be disruptive. I don't think it's like gets in a manual, like you're trying to fix a table. You bought this table at this furniture store, it's not set up, and you're trying to read the manual, right? Like you need some form of guidance to tell you, okay, make sure you have all the parts. Check all what you have first. So it's that checkpoint, I think. Sorry, long answer, but and the second part of the question is, do we use higher order learning objectives? Yeah. Like we can't really say for sure that they'll be able to apply that skill. So, using the right verbs, I think is important. So, you don't say things like they will understand. It's more you should be able to, now that's up to you. Like if you actually learn something and, so you would use something like, you should be able to define or you should be able to explain, but now you should be able to do. That's a different level. Although I can imagine for like a highly specialized training, maybe if you're a CO5 or something, you should be able to detonate a bomb at the end of this training. Like, that's more practical. But for something like, just yeah, I think you get it. Yeah. But great questions though. It's important to, keep thinking about these things because they inform what we create eventually. And keep things simple. You don't even have to go to this level of detail. I think for me, it's just a way to just do things that are different and have people reach out. But in most cases, think simple. Don't complicate things. Don't add cue points. And I keep talking about this cue points. Don't add cue points because what's going to happen is the client is going to give you feedback and the cue point is going to change, and things get thrown off. And just takeaways before we end. understand, when you bring in objects, especially icons, don't group things together. Like if you were to group these two guys together and made it a button, it's going to get clunky because Storyline doesn't know what to apply that action to. So instead, I would put one into the other. That's just keeping things simple. So I would, cut that guy and place him inside of one of the states, and it applies it to all the states anyway. So, well, maybe not, but you get the idea. Like, now they're being treated as one object instead of a group of objects, which can get very tricky very quickly. Yeah. What else can I tell you? Yeah, I mean, there's so many aspects to Storyline, but it's a really easy tool to learn, and they've been pretty consistent over at least the past few years. There's not a lot of big changes, like programs like Beyond and Domino and those other programs. Storyline has been a bit consistent. I mean, more menus to pick from, but they're all just basic stuff. Make sure to you can see things update even as you click around. And but if you're looking to build more interactivity, I would say just start simple. Start with things like, and once you create something, have a master template somewhere where you're just throwing. I mean, I know I do. I have a file somewhere where if I build something, something I think I might reuse, I just throw it on there, so I don't have to build it again. So next time I'm just really bringing it in and changing the colors and stuff like that. And if I find a template that's cool, I just stick with that template for multiple projects. It's better how to use one template than jumping from template to template. I mean, there are times when you do get pulled into different projects and you have to learn their templates, but keep things simple. Most projects that fail, and I can show you a lot of examples of projects that I've been put on where it's like, what are we building here? It's not that serious. Like, we're just trying to teach people a few basic skills. Like, we don't need to get that detailed where so that's like something like this. It's really super easy. You're just using dial, but you can argue this isn't accessible even. But it looks cool, but in some rooms, it's not the right thing to do. So just, if they ask you to build something that's too creative at work, just tell them it's not accessible. Nobody's going to argue with that, right? But if you want to challenge yourself, you can still build it, but why? If it's too creative, I would argue that it's not accessible and could cause problems, right? So this one is just using a dial. That's just telling this text to go to different states whenever. Does everyone feel like they can set something like this up? It's just saying, so this text has different states, and then you're telling this dial to is the animation tab? No. Format tab. Why can't I? Okay, no, I'm not on that dial. This is the dial. So sorry. Trying to control this dial. Yeah, so let me select the dial. I like how everyone is just keeping quiet and not helping me out. Where's the control for the dial? Yeah, storyline is, maybe there are changes in storyline that I don't know. Does anyone know why I'm not seeing my dial controls? It's supposed to be on the format, right?
Yeah.
Okay, design. Sorry, it's on the design. Sorry, my bad. Yes, so this really is just using, you know, you're telling the more values you add here, the smoother it is. But if you wanted to just take, you know, if you wanted to just take 3 steps, you can do that. So, well, maybe not. Yeah, so the more value you add here, the smoother it looks like. But if you just want 3 steps, that's fine too. So you can say, you know, 1, 2, 3, and that's it. But again, a dial is not that much accessible, right? So it's that just, but there are cases when you need to build something like that. You know, I used to think like I needed to have all this cool stuff, but you don't need to build too much cool stuff, especially these days. It's more important that you build for a broader, like some learners wouldn't even know what to do with this dial. Like it's not like if you went to a website, I think it's a different standard when you're learning, because first people don't like to learn. You have to understand that. So now when you're telling them to accept it, something that looks very intriguing to them, then they can start to, you know, yeah, but you get the idea. I think we're going to stop here unless there are more questions.
So there are no more questions on the chat box, except anyone has a question. If you have questions, please kindly ask our facilitator before you press back.
Yeah. So tell me about EduJunction. Is this like an academy? What is it?
Okay, so EduJunction is a community for edtech professionals, instructional designers, learning developers, and also open to aspiring edtech professionals, right? Just for us to collaborate, learn, and grow. For instance, you need people you want to work on a project with. You don't need to go far. We already have people on the group. You can just stop a chat. You get people who can work with you on it. And also, the aim is just to ensure that we're able to learn, grow, and collaborate. That's why we organize webinars every month for us to learn together from industry experts. And also we can, grow. We have mentors who mentor some people, especially those who are beginners, to just help them grow. And also we'll share learning opportunities and also career opportunities. And like I said, the idea is just for us to grow and learn together. And trust me, it's been amazing so far. We came to, we joined LinkedIn this year. That was January, and it's been great so far. It's been impactful. We've learned, even myself, I've learned from members of the community, and I'm sure some of them who are here who are also members of the community can testify as well. It's been great. It's been amazing.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just great to see the growth of, learning in Nigeria. Yeah, just really excited.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work.
Keeps getting better.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. So any other question before we call it a webinar? Okay,
Yeah, sorry.
wondering about realistic.
Sorry, I do have
Someone
just
wants to
one
ask a
question.
question.
Yeah. So, Sam, when you were doing the feedback section on your storyline, does it communicate with the LMS? If a learner should type in something, does it communicate with the LMS?
That's the thing, it doesn't. So that's why it's not advised, because it doesn't communicate with the LMS, but you can print your results though. So the learner can print whatever they typed. So you can make it where they're able to type or to print. So you can add like a print function, which is super easy. So let's say someone were to answer this question in their own words, you can just say, okay, maybe whenever you click on this button, you can print your answers, print slide, and that's it. Like, that's already given them a level of, and just to test this out, I don't know if it would let me actually print in preview mode, but, if there was a printer connected to my computer, then
At this point, we can start thinking about what makes research.
But beyond that, well, it's not letting me do that in preview mode. But if I publish this, you would see that print button pop up. But that's also assuming that your learner has a printer installed. But otherwise, you can use like an external tool like Google, any of those Google Forms or whatever, to embed a survey, which you just make it look like it's part of Storyline. So you can embed a web object, for example. So, go to new slide and let's just try that real quickly. So let's say, I don't know, is Google Jam still a thing? I know there used to be a tool called Google Jam, like Google Jam board, or even a mirror board. You can embed some of those tools inside of Storyline as a web object, so that could solve that problem. But it also takes monitoring. So you have to, if you're working for a client, you have to make sure they have access to. You have to make sure they have access to the website and so on. So but it's possible to display. What can we? It's possible to display any. I'm trying to see what we can display here. So you can have, any web object. So imagine this was a mirror board, for example. You can embed a mirror board and have it store that answer and send it to their own server. But sometimes it may take you may need to log into Mirror to actually do that or something. But there are tools out there, especially now. There are so many tools you can embed. Hope that answers your question. All right.
All right, so I think there's one last question for you in the chat box, and after that we can just wrap it up.
Yeah.
Wondering about realistic timelines for learning reinforcement. What is the ideal time span to reinforce concepts? Should they be repeated after 2 weeks or a month or something else? That's from Muhammad.
Yeah. Yeah, Mohammed, I'm curious about your. Can you tell me about what you do and?
So I work as a senior instructional designer for the KPI Institute. I'm working remotely. This is an organization based in Australia.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think it really depends on the. It depends on on the audience, the topic, what kind of, are we talking like cybersecurity training, or are we talking something that's critical that they need on their job every day? So it really depends on what the topic is. We can't really generalize, but for something like onboarding would be a training you get at the start of when you join a company. Like, you wouldn't get onboarding again, except maybe you could get onboarded to be a manager or something. Like, you could get those types of trainings after onboarding. And something like cybersecurity could be a yearly training. Something like soft skills, that could be something your manager determines that you need and adds to your learning. If you're learning a new tool that was introduced to the company, then you're probably gonna that's gonna be a quick learning curve for a new tool. But if you're maybe talking about sales training, you're changing products every season, you would need to update yourself on the new products and so on. So it really depends on, in reality, except you work in a sales environment and so on, people don't like to take trainings, except maybe they're engaging or they actually see value in taking them. But if it's, I work for Starbucks, and if we're training employees who are actually in the stores, they're using their iPads and so on. They need that training. If they don't have that training, they can't really do the work like they're supposed to. So that's a different level of. So I guess what I'm saying is that different things to consider when we're talking about reinforcement. But reinforcement is definitely good. I think maybe the main training is, maybe there's some follow-up. That's why blended learning is encouraged, right? So maybe you do some form of e-learning at first, and then there's a follow-up with some coaching and guidance and in-person facilitation and so on. But just find a way to structure the training where the other ones feel like reminders and not like they're going through the whole thing again, because of course we expect them to have some knowledge after taking that first training. Hope that helps.
It does. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. I want to believe it's been an insightful session for each of us. I've been able to learn so many concepts from today's session, which I will apply definitely. So I don't know if one person just wants to share with us how this session has been so far, and then we can call it a day. Muhammad, I don't know if perhaps you have more questions or you need more clarity on one thing or the other. You can always reach out to Sam. I believe he's open to that.
Yes,
His LinkedIn
absolutely. Feel free to connect.
name, yeah. So you can just reach out to Sam. His name is Samuel Akbata. Yeah, we also have the community. Perhaps I'll just drop the link to the form. You can always fill it, and then you'll be reached out to. Someone will contact you to share the link to the community so you can join. So Samuela's dropped his profile link, LinkedIn profile link. So you can just as well join the community. I'll get the link now so you can join. All right, who wants to share how the session has been so far so we can release our facilitator, Mr. Sam, so he can go back to the stadium to watch his voice or go back to his TV. And thank you so much, Samuel, for the time and sacrifice. Thank you for choosing us over your players. We appreciate
Oh, we
it.
won. We won the match. Sorry, we won. We won
Yeah,
the match. Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you won.
Okay, I'm happy now. All right,
Yeah, I
thanks
know,
everyone.
right?
It's been
Yeah.
bravo. It's been great hanging out.
Is that
And
someone?
sorry.
I said, is that someone beefing you? I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that's
that's
Marvel.
Marvel. I'm sure he's. I'm guessing he's a Arsenal fan, or yeah. I mean, I don't even know who our rival is nowadays.
Oh my God. Hi.
Yeah, that's my daughter.
Hello.
Hi.
I can't
How are you?
All right, bye everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye. I'm looking for the link to the form so I can drop it for one minute. We want to leave the call, we can leave the call. Thank you so much for time. I know it's fast spent already. Thank you, guys. We meet next month. Till we meet again. We know we do this every month. Thank you so much for your time. Once again, thank you, Sam. Bye. I'll reach out to Mohammed on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye. I'll send the recording to each of us. Stop recording.